The Arctic, a place where the cold does not visit. It lives there permanently, settled into every crack of the earth, every breath of wind, every inch of endless white silence. Winter had arrived again, and with it came a stillness so total it felt like the world had simply stopped. The snow-covered land grew even emptier. Animals disappeared like ghosts. Somewhere inside a cave carved into the frozen terrain, a small white wolf pup was sleeping deeply, curled up in the warm embrace of a large female wolf, soft, still, completely at peace. Then the young male's eyes flew open, not slowly, not gradually, all at once like a switch had been thrown somewhere deep inside his skull. Something was very, very wrong. He tried to lift his arm to rub his eyes. Nothing happened. He tried again. Still nothing. And then the sound that came out of his throat was not his voice. It was a howl. A wolf's howl. Sulin, because that was his name, the name that still felt like his, went completely still as the truth crashed down on him like a wall of Arctic ice. He had no arms. He had paws. He twisted his small body around, craning his neck to look at himself. And there it was. White fur, 4 legs, a tiny snout. He was a wolf pup, a pure white Arctic wolf pup. His mind went blank for a solid few seconds. Then the thoughts started rushing in all at once. What happened? When did this happen? How is any of this even remotely possible right now? Sulin was a young man from a wealthy family, the kind whose parents were always too busy building their company to actually raise him. He had grown up mostly alone, fending for himself. That independence had turned him into an explorer by nature. He chased adventure the way other men chased careers. And yesterday, or what felt like yesterday, he had found something huge. Deep inside a mysterious cave, the young man had discovered a crystal coffin. Ancient, enormous, carved all over with inscriptions and imagery so intricate they seemed almost alive on the stone. Even with his background in archaeology, Sulin could only make out fragments of the text. Scattered phrases, Ice Age, great changes to heaven and earth, species evolution, divine demons. He had spent so long studying the carvings that by the time he tried to leave, the world had started spinning around him. Then the floor came up fast, and everything went completely dark. He had not expected to wake up at all. He certainly had not expected to wake up as a wolf pup in the middle of the Arctic, nestled against a female wolf who smelled like warmth and pine sap. Just to be absolutely sure he was not dreaming, the young male lifted one small white paw and slapped himself across the face. Hard. The pain was sharp and immediate and absolutely real. So this was his life now. A wolf. A tiny, powerless, 30-centimeter-long Arctic wolf pup in one of the most brutal environments on the planet. He let out a long, slow internal sigh. Fortunately, Sulin had been surviving on his own since he was a child. He was adaptable in a way most people simply were not. The shock faded faster than he expected. He began to think, and then, just as he was starting to settle into his new reality, something appeared before his eyes. A pale gray panel floating in the air, visible only to him. Text filled the space. Name, Sulin. Species, Arctic wolf. Level 0, all stats at 1. Evolution points, 0. And at the bottom, a single notification. Devouring evolution activated. 10 potential potions received. Sulin stared at the panel for a long moment. Then, slowly, a small spark of relief ignited somewhere in his chest. His situation was terrible, but it was not completely without hope. A system, a progression mechanic, the ability to grow stronger by consuming other creatures. In the worst possible scenario, he had been handed exactly the kind of tool that could save him. He began reading through the stats carefully, analyzing each one with a focused mind of a man who had spent years studying complex things in difficult conditions under serious time pressure. Chi blood was his life force. If it hit 0, he died. Endurance governed physical stamina. Strength determined how hard he could hit. Defense, how much damage he could absorb. Speed. The potential potions were particularly interesting. Each one, according to the system notes, could unlock hidden potential within his body. Extra attribute points beyond normal level gains. By the time he had processed all of it, the depression of waking up as a wolf had almost entirely lifted. It had been replaced by something much more useful. Calculation, determination. He shifted carefully in the warm fur around him and looked up at the large female wolf, whose paw was draped over him like a blanket. The system immediately pulled up her stats as well. Wolf Mother, level 4, Chi blood at 432. Every stat in the 30s. Strong by the standards of a female Arctic wolf. Leagues above Sulin's current 0-level body. He wiggled free of her paw and climbed shakily onto her belly, looking around at the rest of the cave. Several other wolves lay sleeping in various corners, conserving energy for the hunt. Right beside Wolf Mother slept the largest wolf in the cave. The young male scanned his stats. Wolf Father, level 6. Chi blood at nearly 600. The strongest one here, without question. The fact that Wolf Father and Wolf Mother slept in the center of the cave, in the warmest spot, where the dim Arctic light reached, made it clear who led this pack. There was no mistaking it. Sulin noticed another small shape tucked into Wolf Mother's embrace alongside him. A tiny female pup, even smaller than himself, nursing contentedly. His wolf sister, clearly newborn. Watching his wolf sister eat with such total satisfaction stirred something in his own body. His stomach responded before his brain could argue. He leaned over and began nursing as well. The moment the warm milk hit his tongue, the system chimed softly in his ear. Consuming Arctic wolf mother's milk, evolution points plus 0.1. It was almost nothing, but it was a start. Drowsiness pulled at him almost immediately after that, the way it does with all newborn mammals, human or wolf without exception. His eyes grew heavy, his thoughts slowed. He let go and slept. 1 month passed inside the same frozen cave, and everything had changed, at least where Sulin himself was concerned. Wolf Sister let out a soft, startled little howl and stared at her brother with wide, confused eyes. She had been born just days after him. They had started out roughly the same size. Not anymore. Sulin was now several times larger than his sister. He sat near the cave entrance, gazing out at the white expanse beyond, and barely glanced back when he heard her surprised little cry. He gave her a gentle pat on the head with one large paw. She was not the only one staring. Wolf Father, Wolf Mother, and several other pack members all watched him with quiet, careful eyes. If they had not seen Sulin grow up in front of them over the past 30 days, they might have genuinely believed a different wolf had somehow slipped into the cave and taken his place. His growth had been, by any natural standard, completely impossible, and the potential potions had played a massive role in that. 10 vials, used strategically, had accelerated everything. By day 3, the young male was running and jumping on his own. By day 10, he had weaned off milk entirely and was eating solid prey. By day 20, he had outgrown every other pup in the cave. Now, at 30 days old, Sulin's body matched that of a typical 1-year-old male Arctic wolf. His stats reflected it. Level 3. All core attributes at 30. Speed boosted all the way to 60. That speed stat was the key. With each level gained, the system gave him 10 freely distributable bonus points on top of the standard increases. Every single one of those points went straight to speed. Speed was the foundation of everything out here. It was the difference between eating and starving, between escaping and dying. Sulin had understood that truth from the very first day of his new life. In the heavens and on the earth, speed reigned supreme. That was not a motivational phrase at all. It was cold, hard survival math. A deep, resonant growl rolled through the cave and pulled Sulin out of his thoughts. He looked up. Wolffather was calling the pack to hunt. That low, commanding sound happened every single day, and every single day, without exception, the pack came back with less than they needed. The Arctic was growing harder on all of them. The prey was scarcer and the distances greater. Even Wolf Mother, who normally stayed back with the pups, stood up and joined the hunting party. What that meant was clear. Things had become genuinely desperate. Before she left, Wolf Mother pressed her large nose gently against Sulin and his wolf sister both. She let out 2 soft howls. The meaning was clear even without language. Watch over your sister. Be safe. Wolffather gave a few brief instructions to the cousin, a pup about 6 months old who had taken on the role of den guardian, and then led the entire adult pack out into the white, all 8 of them. What remained behind in the cave was 5 pups. Sulin, his wolf sister, the cousin, a gray-white pup from another female in the pack, and one other, a young male who always stood slightly apart. This last pup was different. He had no parents. Wolf Father and Wolf Mother had found him alone during a hunt and brought him back, out of sympathy for their own kind, or something close to it. He was 3 months old and nearly as large as the 6-month-old cousin. His growth rate was fast, not as fast as Sulin's, nothing was, but fast enough that the other pups gave him a wide berth. Sulin watched the lone orphan wolf for a quiet moment, studying him carefully. Then he made his decision. He was going out to hunt. The pack was struggling. Wolf Father and Wolf Mother had both grown visibly thinner over recent weeks. It was clear they had been sacrificing their own portions to make sure the pups had enough to eat. That was not something the young male could simply watch continue. He had a system. He had speed. He had a human mind and a wolf's body. It was time to start pulling his own weight, and then some. He let out a short howl to signal his intentions to Wolf's sister and the cousin. The cousin howled back immediately, sharply, in protest. Sulin ignored it completely and walked out into the Arctic. The cold hit him the moment he stepped outside. Even through his thick white fur, it was staggering. The system confirmed it instantly. Cold weather causes harm. Vitality value, -1. A warning. A second prompt followed. Physical strength depletes twice as fast in these conditions. Conserve energy. Sulin exhaled a cold cloud of breath and began moving, carefully, deliberately, eyes scanning everything. Hunting in the Arctic was not about brute force. It was about patience, observation, and timing. The young male understood this the way he understood everything, by thinking it through completely first. He had originally planned to follow the adult pack's trail and observe their techniques from a distance, but he abandoned that idea almost immediately, because something far more interesting had appeared nearby. A warren of Arctic rabbits. 7, maybe 8 of them, scattered across a patch of exposed moss, their white bodies almost invisible against the snow as they grazed in small, nervous clusters. Sulin went completely still. His pale blue eyes locked onto the group with quiet, calculated focus. The system pulled up their stats automatically. The dominant male rabbit was level 3, speed 53. That speed was why Wolf Father and Wolf Mother never bothered with rabbits. Chasing them burned more energy than catching them was worth for a full-grown wolf. For Sulin, the math was entirely different. His speed was already faster than their leader. His endurance recovered quickly with even a small meal. Catching one rabbit would break even. Catching 2 or more would be pure profit. He dropped into a crouch. Still as stone, white against white, the young male began his approach. 1 step, stop. 2 steps, stop. The rabbits twitched and scanned. Their ears rotated like satellite dishes. They sensed something nearby. But Sulin's camouflage was near perfect. His pure white coat dissolved into the snow beneath him completely. He waited them out, patient and unmoving, until their alarm gradually faded back to grazing. 30 meters, 20, 15. He coiled every muscle in his body like a spring being compressed all the way down, waiting for the exact right moment to release everything at once in a single burst. He exploded forward, a white streak through the snow, faster than the rabbits could process the danger. The dominant male rabbit barely had time to lift its head before the young wolf was already on top of it. The impact was devastating. Wolf claws struck the rabbit's neck with 30 points of strength behind them, boosted by a speed of 60. The sound of bone snapping was sharp and clean in the cold air. The rabbit dropped. Sulin was already turning, already accelerating toward the ones that were fleeing. The young ones were slower. He caught 3 of them before the rest scattered beyond reach into the snow. Half an hour later, 6 rabbits lay in the snow. The young male stood over them, breathing hard but steady, his white fur spotted with red. 6 rabbits, 1 dominant male, 1 female, 4 young ones. A real haul. He ate 2 on the spot, enough to recover his stamina and collect a handful of evolution points from the system's steady chime in his ear. Then he picked up the remaining 4 and began the trip back to the cave. He had to make 2 trips. Each time he dropped a load of carcasses at the cave entrance, the other pups stared at him with wide, stunned eyes. Even the cousin who had tried to stop him from leaving. He growled softly and dropped one of the smaller rabbit bodies in front of the group. A clear signal. You can eat. Wolf's sister moved first, then the gray-white pup. The orphan wolf lunged in immediately after. Then the orphan wolf tried to snatch a piece directly from the weaker cousin's mouth. In one fluid motion, Sulin rose from where he was resting and sent the orphan wolf sliding 3 meters across the cave floor. The slap had not been full force, but it was enough. The orphan wolf scrambled upright, whimpered loudly, and then went very, very still. It did not try to steal from anyone again for a long time. The hierarchy of the cave had just been established without a single wasted word. Sulin lay back down, closed his eyes, and let the warmth of the cave and the hum of the system carry him towards sleep. That evening, the adult pack returned exhausted and nearly empty-handed. Half a seal, scavenged from a polar bear's leftovers. Not enough for 8 wolves, not even close to enough. Wolf Mother's mood was dark. Then she smelled it. Blood, strong and fresh, coming from inside the cave where only the pups had been. The entire pack froze. Wolf Father let out a roar that shook the cave walls and launched himself inside. Every pup jolted awake. Sulin was on his feet before he even fully understood why. Wolf Father stood at the cave entrance, scanning wildly for a threat that was not there. His fur stood on end like a fence. Seconds later, Wolf Mother and the rest flooded in. They swept the cave with their eyes. The pups were fine, unhurt, full even. The tension in their bodies collapsed slowly, fur settling back into place. Wolf Mother pressed her nose against Sulin and licked him over and over, her relief so overwhelming it almost looked like grief. He let her. He understood now what that panicked charge had really meant. Then he padded to the back of the cave and dragged out the 2 remaining rabbit carcasses he had saved. He dropped them at Wolf Mother's feet. She sniffed them. Fresh. Caught today? She looked at him slowly. The rest of the pack looked too. A 1-month-old pup had gone out alone and come back with 6 rabbits. The way they watched him shifted in that moment. Something in their eyes had changed. Something had clicked. Wolf Mother ate quietly and deliberately, pulling half a rabbit away from the others when she was done. She tucked it into a corner where only Sulin and Wolf's sister could see it. Then she let out a soft howl. It was a private sound meant only for her 2 pups. The meaning behind it was perfectly simple. I saved this for you. It is yours. Sulin looked at the half-rabbit for a long moment. In his previous life, food had never been a problem. His parents had given him every material thing. What they had never given him was exactly what this was. This, a mother going hungry so her children would not, was something he had never experienced before, not as a human. Only now, reborn as a wolf, had he been shown what that kind of love actually looked like. He made himself a promise in that moment, lying there beside Wolf Mother in the cold dark of the Arctic cave. He would evolve. He would grow stronger. He would become the apex of this frozen world, the Arctic Wolf King. Not just for himself, for the pack that had taken him in, for the mother who went hungry so he could eat. Whatever this second life was, he would not waste a single moment or a single evolution point of it. He closed his eyes in the warm darkness of the cave. Tomorrow he would hunt again. Tonight he simply rested and let the cold world wait. If you made it this far, drop a comment. Would you have gone out to hunt alone like Sulin did, or played it safe? Hit subscribe if you want to follow this white wolf all the way to the top of the Arctic food chain. The next morning, Sulin opened his eyes to an empty cave. Wolf Father and Wolf Mother were already gone, and so were every other adult wolf in the pack. They had slipped out before dawn. He stretched his white body slowly, still half wrapped in sleep, and looked around. Wolf's sister, cousin, and the orphan pup were all still curled up in their corners. completely dead to the world. Young mammals sleep like stones. That much had not changed between species. Sulin stood up, shook out his fur, and walked to the entrance of the cave to look out at the Arctic. It was around 10 in the morning by his internal estimate, but the sky above the Arctic continent showed almost nothing. A pale gray smear of light where the sun should have been. Nothing more. Winters here were longer than anywhere else on Earth, the nights deeper. Sometimes the sun disappeared entirely for days at a time, leaving only that dim, colorless glow pressing through the clouds. Sulin tilted his head back and let out a long howl into the empty white expanse. It echoed off nothing. The Arctic swallowed it whole. He held still for a moment, then started walking. He was hungry. That was the first and most immediate fact of his morning. The system had already confirmed that evolution points from Arctic rabbits were now nearly negligible at his current level. The math was simple. Rabbits cost energy to catch, and gave almost nothing back in terms of growth. Unless he was on the verge of starvation, chasing rabbits was a waste of a wolf with a system. So he moved deeper into the white, nose reading the air constantly, blue eyes scanning every shadow and hollow in the snow. A wolf's sense of smell is extraordinary. His was better than most. Not even 15 minutes from the cave, something hit him. A scent. Strong. Unmistakable. The iron-copper smell of fresh blood drifting on the cold wind from somewhere ahead and to the left. He went immediately still, every muscle in his body locked into place. His pale blue eyes narrowed. Something had died out there recently. Very recently. The scent was still warm in the air. He did not rush. He moved carefully, low to the ground, closing the distance one slow step at a time. Whatever had killed something out here might still be nearby. Caution was not optional. About 15 minutes of slow, careful progress later, Sulin pushed through a cluster of frozen shrubs and stopped. There in the snow lay the carcass of a large male Arctic reindeer. Dead. The system pulled up its stats automatically. Level 7. Chi blood over 1,000. Strength 53. This was a creature that the entire wolf pack working together would have struggled to bring down. And yet here it lay, with barely any signs of tearing on its body. Only the neck and the limbs showed blood, still fresh and bright red against the white snow. It had died mere minutes ago. Sulin scanned the area carefully. No bear tracks, no wolf prints, no signs of a predator fight at all. Whatever had killed this reindeer had not stayed to eat it. That was deeply unusual. He moved closer and examined the wounds directly. Then he saw it. The antlers were gone, cut away cleanly. The deer's most valuable parts had been removed with a blade, not torn by teeth. The neck wound told the rest of the story. A deep, perfectly round puncture. No animal made wounds like that. That was a firearm. This reindeer had been shot by a human and then stripped for parts. Poachers. Out here on the Arctic continent, even in this brutal frozen wilderness, humans had found a way to reach in and take what they wanted. Velvet antler. Deer parts sold for serious money. The realization settled into Sulin's chest like a stone dropping into cold water. The Arctic was not the safe, isolated world it looked like from inside the cave. Danger came in many forms out here. He filed that awareness away and began to eat. There was no point in letting good meat go to waste while processing existential concerns. The reindeer was fresh and the meat near the chest was tender. The system chimed the moment his teeth broke through, consuming Arctic reindeer meat. 3 evolution points. His eyes lit up instantly. 3 points from a single bite. This was something else entirely. He ate steadily and without rushing, keeping awareness of his surroundings even while he fed. The system kept chiming as his evolution points climbed. 2.8, 2.6, 2.4. After about 5 or 6 gin of meat, Sulin stopped. He was not full by the standards of his growing body, but out here in the open, eating until he was sluggish was a gamble he could not afford. He checked his total. Over 70 evolution points accumulated, just under 10 away from his next level up. Close, very close. He would need only a little more to push through to the next threshold. He gripped the reindeer carcass in his jaws and began dragging it back toward the cave. The animal weighed at least 200 jin. For a wolf his size, this was a serious physical challenge. But Sulin did not think like a wolf. He thought like a human engineer solving a logistics problem. He found 2 smooth shrubs nearby and slid them under the carcass to reduce the friction against the snow. It worked. The drag became manageable. Progress was slow but steady. Wolffather himself would have struggled to move this carcass alone. Sulin was doing it, using nothing but intelligence and patience. He was maybe halfway back to the cave, focused entirely on the effort when the hair along his spine stood up. Every instinct in his body fired at once. Something in the bushes to his left had moved. He had not heard it. He had not smelled it over the overwhelming scent of the reindeer blood. But the animal part of his brain had caught something. A shift in air pressure, a shadow between branches. Then a female lynx exploded from the undergrowth directly at him, fangs bared and front claws already extended, launching herself at full speed toward the side of his neck. A perfect ambush strike. Sulin threw himself sideways. Not fast enough. The female lynx's leading claw caught his flank and tore through the fur, raking a line of burning pain across his ribs. He hit the snow and rolled. He scrambled to his feet immediately, blood melting red circles into the white beneath him. The system had already pulled up the lynx's stats. Level 4, strength 49, speed 53, 1 level above him, significantly stronger in raw attack power. the kind of creature that, as a rule, did not pick fights with wolves, because wolves were larger, tougher, and they ran in packs. But Sulin was alone, and to the lynx, he must have looked like an easy target. A lone wolf, distracted by prey too large to move quickly, completely exposed. The female had waited for her moment. The lynx circled him with the smooth, liquid movement of a born predator. Her spotted gray body low to the ground, pale, feline eyes locked on him with absolute, unblinking calculation. Sulin met her gaze and felt something shift inside him. Not fear. Something colder and more deliberate than fear. He had survived 20-plus years alone as a human. He was not going to die here as a wolf. He bared his fangs and held his ground. The lynx lunged. He met her front paw with his own claws, but the difference in raw strength was immediate and brutal. He was knocked back a full step by the impact. He could not win this through brute force. That was clear within the first exchange, but his speed was 60. Hers was 53. That gap was small, but it was real, and it was all he had to work with. He began moving, constantly, fluidly, never staying in one place long enough for the lynx to time her strikes properly. She was fast. He was faster, by just enough to keep himself from being gutted. The two of them traded blows across a wide circle of blood-stained snow. The lynx's claws were longer and her strikes were heavier, but every time she connected, she left herself open for half a second. Sulin used those half seconds. Not to retreat, to bite. Each time the lynx landed a hit on him, he bit back. Not at her throat, but at her flesh, tearing off small chunks wherever he could reach. The system chimed each time he swallowed. 2.5 evolution points, then 2.4. The lynx's flesh was feeding his progression, even as the fight was tearing him open piece by piece. The female lynx felt her flesh being taken, and the madness in her eyes deepened. She stopped trying to make clean kills and simply went berserk, driving herself forward with no strategy at all. That was exactly what Sulin had been waiting for. A berserk opponent is a predictable opponent. He let her charge come, absorbed 2 hits to his back, and bit down hard on her front left paw. He tore away a chunk of muscle. The lynx's front leg buckled. She roared with rage and pain, and for the first time, Sulin saw something new flicker behind those fierce feline eyes. Hesitation. But he did not give her the space to reconsider. He felt the evolution points push his total past the line. The system chimed. Not a soft sound this time, but something that resonated through every cell in his body. Congratulations to the host for leveling up to level 4. All core stats rose to 40. Speed jumped to 70. And with 10 free attribute points dropping into his hands, he put every single one into speed. His speed became 80. In that instant, the entire dynamic of the fight changed completely. What had been a brutal war of attrition was suddenly, irrevocably over. The lynx just did not know it yet. She tried to break away. Her instincts had finally told her that something was wrong, that this fight had tilted past the point where she could win it. She spun and sprinted for the tree line, but 80 against 53 was not a race. It was a formality. Sulin closed the distance in seconds, a white streak across the snow, and hit the female lynx from behind with everything he had. The impact shattered her spine. The force sent her tumbling several meters through the snow before she came to a stop, sides heaving, blood running from the corners of her mouth. She did not get up. Sulin walked to her slowly. He did not make it linger. One precise strike to her skull and the fight was over. He stood over her in the silence of the Arctic and breathed. His wounds ached everywhere. Then the notifications came, floating in the air in pale gray text, stacking one on top of another. Overcoming the strong while weak. Breakthrough in the midst of battle. Combat rating, S. He stared at the floating text for a long moment. An S-rank combat evaluation. A talent reward dropped into his system panel. He checked it. Hunting. D level. Active skill with a 24-hour cooldown. When activated, movement speed increased by 50%. Attack power increased by 50%, and his presence would be masked far more effectively from prey. Duration 60 seconds. Sulin closed the panel. He could think about the hunting talent later. Right now, 2 large carcasses lay in the snow, and he needed to get both of them back to the cave before anything else picked up the scent. He hid the lynx's body deep in the bushes first, then dragged the reindeer the rest of the way back to the cave. Made the trip twice. By the time both carcasses were inside, his legs were burning. When he dropped them both on the cave floor and the other pups opened their eyes, the way they looked at him changed in an instant. Wide blue eyes moved from the carcasses to Sulin and stayed there. They were not looking at a littermate anymore. They were not even looking at a slightly older sibling who happened to be bigger. They were looking at something that commanded a completely different kind of respect. Sulin set the lynx carcass aside. That meat was for him alone, packed with evolution points he could still extract from it, and pushed the reindeer toward Wolf Sister and the others with one paw. He let Wolf Sister eat first, then Cousin. Then, after both of them had taken their fill, he allowed the orphan pup and the gray-white cub to approach. The hierarchy had been set. It would hold. The afternoon passed quietly. Sulin ate from the lynx and watched his evolution points climb with each chime from the system. The cave smelled of blood and warmth and the particular peace of being well-fed. Evening came fast, the way it always did in the Arctic winter. Sulin woke from a short rest to find that Wolf Father and Wolf Mother still had not returned. The other adults were also still absent. He checked the air at the cave entrance. The wind had changed. It was stronger now, sharper, carrying small needles of ice in it that stung even through his thick white fur. A storm was building. The system confirmed it immediately. Harsh climate damage active, vitality value -5, physical strength consumption doubled. He stepped back inside before the warning even finished appearing. That was likely why the pack had not come back. Wolffather would have read the weather the same way Sulin just had, and made the call to shelter somewhere closer rather than push through a blizzard. He was not worried about them. Wolffather was the most experienced hunter in the pack, and experienced hunters did not take unnecessary risks. They would wait the storm out and return when it broke. What the young male was thinking about was the reindeer carcass, 200 jin of meat inside a sealed cave. With a storm sealing them in, they had enough food to last several days without hunting at all. He did a patrol of the area just outside the cave entrance, checking for any predator that might try to take shelter nearby and stumble across them. Nothing. He came back inside and took up his post. Cousin was already asleep. So was Wolf's sister. The orphan pup had tucked itself against the gray-white cub like a pillow, making itself comfortable at someone else's expense, as usual. Sulin noted it. He settled against a wind-shielded rock near the entrance and listened to the storm build outside. The howling of the wind grew louder. Snow drove sideways past the cave mouth in thick white sheets. He had taken watch. That was the job now. And while the blizzard raged and the other pups slept in the warm dark behind him, the white wolf sat perfectly still at the edge of the light and kept his eyes open. Sometime deep in the night, a sound cut through the storm. Not wind, wings. Something had flown directly to the cave entrance. A bird, disoriented and desperate, trying to get out of the blizzard. It landed at the cave mouth, an Arctic tern. Black cap, white body, red bill tipped bright even in the dim light. One of the oldest bird species on the planet, known for traveling further than almost any animal alive. As a human and a student of archaeology, Sulin would have been genuinely fascinated to observe one up close. He would have studied its markings, looked up its migration records, taken mental notes. As the white wolf sitting guard at the cave entrance, he looked at the Arctic tern for approximately 1 second, and then swatted it out of the air with a single paw before it could fly back into the storm. The system chimed. 1.5 evolution points, then 1.3 as he finished eating it. A small, unexpected bonus for a long night of watch duty. He licked his paw clean and went back to watching. By the time the pale gray suggestion of morning began pressing through the storm, the other pups were waking up. Wolf's sister and the gray-white cub began a slow, sleepy wrestling match near the back wall. The orphan pup, who had been using the gray-white cub as both a pillow and apparently a chew toy, was now awake and full of energy that had nowhere to go. It bounced toward the cave entrance immediately. A gust of wind hit it the moment it reached the opening. The small dark wolf body was physically picked up and rolled several meters back into the cave, tumbling end over end before coming to a stop. It scrambled to its feet, shook the snow off its ears, and marched straight back to the cave mouth to try again. Sulin watched this happen 3 times before he stopped watching and closed his eyes. 7 days the blizzard lasted, coming and going, easing, and then slamming back harder. Through all of it, the cave held, the food held. Sulin kept eating from the lynx and managing the pups through every long hour. By the time the storm finally stopped completely, the lynx was entirely gone. More than 20 evolution points extracted from it across the week, slow and steady, like drawing water from a deep well. The orphan pup had eaten heavily during those 7 days, and the results were visible. He was bigger, darker. His gray fur had deepened almost to charcoal. His limbs had filled out with real muscle. Sulin scanned him one morning and stopped. The species entry in the system had changed. It no longer simply read Arctic wolf. Beside it, a new tag had appeared. Variant species. Something had shifted inside that pup. The orphan's stats had jumped significantly. Strength 28, defense 25, endurance 27, well above what any normal wolf his age should have been carrying. The food had unlocked something. Sulin approached the orphan pup slowly. The dark wolf saw him coming and dropped immediately. Belly flat to the ground, tail tucked, making the small, submissive sounds it had learned to produce quickly enough. It even rolled over and showed its belly. In wolf culture, that was the highest possible gesture of trust and submission. The most vulnerable part of the body, offered freely to the one above you in the hierarchy. Sulin studied the dark wolf for a moment. A variant species, unusual physical development, natural strength that exceeded its peers by a wide margin, and a personality that had been thoroughly disciplined into loyalty. This pup could be useful. Not now. He was still too young, too raw, too uncontrolled. But given time and food and the right kind of guidance, the orphan could become something worth having beside him. He made his decision quietly. He let out a low, deliberate howl. Formal. Clear. A sound that in wolf language carried a specific weight. You are mine now. You belong to this hierarchy. That is permanent. The dark wolf whimpered softly in total submission and then, carefully, rolled back to its feet. Its tail was still low, but its eyes had changed slightly. Something had settled in them. A sense of belonging. Sulin gave the orphan pup a name. In his head only. The pup's brain could not process the concept of names, and he was not going to embarrass himself trying to teach a wolf cub to recognize syllables. He called him Xiao Hui, Little Gray. Simple, accurate, the kind of name that fit a dark charcoal wolf who had come from nothing and was apparently going to be something worth watching after all. With Xiaohui officially claimed as his subordinate, Su Lin walked out of the cave and leapt onto the large boulder at the entrance. The storm had passed completely. The sky was clear for the first time in a week. His white fur caught the long mist Arctic sunlight and held it, glowing against the endless gray-white landscape behind him. He stood at his full height and looked out over the territory, every inch of it visible. He was the size of a full adult wolf now, bigger than most. And in terms of raw capability, he was already well beyond anything his age should have been able to produce. The system had seen to that. As he stood there surveying the frozen expanse, movement appeared on the horizon, a line of figures, organized and deliberate, moving toward the cave through the snow. He recognized the silhouettes immediately. Wolf father, wolf mother. All 8 of the adult wolves, returning together, none of them missing. Every single one of them carrying something. 1 full adult moose and 3 moose calves dragged between them. Su Lin threw his head back and howled. The sound went out across the Arctic like a signal flare, and from far away, answering howls came back. Wolf father's voice, wolf mother's voice. The pack had come home. Wolf mother reached the cave first. She had pushed herself hardest on the final stretch, burning her last reserves to close the distance between herself and her pups just a little faster. The moment she cleared the entrance, she pressed her nose into Su Lin's fur and licked him. Once, twice, 3 times, checking every inch of him with the urgent need of a mother who had spent 7 days not knowing. Then she pulled back and looked at him fully. He had grown again, another size larger than when she had left a week ago. The look in her eyes as she registered this sat somewhere between pride and bewilderment. Su Lin held still and let her finish. He did not enjoy being licked by wolves as a general rule, but he understood what it meant, and he was not going to deny Wolf Mother that moment after 7 days in a blizzard. She nudged one of the moose calves toward him, the smallest, freshest, most tender one. The best piece offered to him directly, before anyone else in the pack had even approached the food. Su Lin looked at the calf. Then he let out a low howl and nudged it back toward Wolf Sister. Soft meat like that was exactly what Wolf Sister still needed at her stage. He could handle something tougher. Wolf Mother watched this and extended her tongue to lick him a second time. He moved his head slightly to one side. The point had been made. He did not need to stand there and be groomed to prove it. He led Wolf Mother back inside, where Wolf Sister, cousin, and the gray-white pup were already crowding around her with the unbridled enthusiasm that small wolves reserved for returning family members. Only Xiaohui hung back. The dark charcoal orphan pup stood slightly behind Su Lin, watching the reunion with careful, cautious eyes. He did not rush forward the way the others did toward Wolf Mother. He pattered close behind Su Lin instead, trailing him the way a shadow trails its owner, and when Su Lin settled onto his rock, Xiaohui curled up beside him and went still. That was his place now. Wolffather came in last, as lead wolves do. He scanned the cave with one slow sweep of his amber eyes, confirmed everyone was present and undamaged, and the last of the tension left his large body. He had worried about the pups during the storm. Every experienced hunter knew what a 7-day blizzard could do to young animals left without an adult to guard them properly through the night. The pack settled around the food they had dragged in. Moose carcasses were laid out, the hierarchy observed, the distribution organized without a single word passing between any of them. Wolffather positioned the adult female moose in the center. The system pulled up her stats for Su Lin as he approached. Level 8. Chi blood over 1,200. The largest deer species on Earth. The moose was an extraordinary animal, built like a small mountain, shoulders elevated like a camel's hump, dragged back through the snow by the effort of all 8 adult wolves working together. Su Lin moved to the carcass without hesitation, found the neck, and tore off a piece. The system chimed before he had finished swallowing. 5 evolution points. His pale blue eyes lit up immediately. 5 points from a single bite. He had never hit that number before. Not from the reindeer, not from the lynx. The moose meat was in a completely different category. He took a full breath and began to eat. The system kept chiming steadily. 4.7, 4.4, 4.1. The numbers dropped with each bite as they always did, but they stayed high for far longer than anything else he had eaten. He ate until his belly was round. 10 full kilograms of moose, roughly what Wolffather himself consumed at a proper meal. When he stopped, his evolution point total stood at 125. Only 35 points from level 5. He sat back, closed his eyes, and let the warmth of the cave settle into his muscles. Xiaohui ate from the remaining carcass only after Su Lin had finished completely. The next few days passed in unusual calm. The whole pack rested and recovered from the long hunt and brutal storm. 1 adult moose and 3 juveniles provided enough meat for everyone to eat well. Su Lin kept pulling evolution points from the moose at each meal, watching the number climb. By the end of the 4th day, he was just 5 points away from the next threshold. 5 points. He could feel it. The restlessness that came with being that close to a breakthrough was real and physical. He kept rising, moving toward the cave entrance, only to be driven back each time by a low growl from Wolffather. Wolffather's concern was genuine. The weather outside was still dangerous. His authority as lead wolf meant his word was final within the pack. Su Lin understood that and did not push against it directly. He also understood that challenging Wolffather openly would be a mistake. Not because he doubted his ability to win, but because winning it would cost the pack more stability than any 5 evolution points were worth. Wolffather's authority was what held the newer, less loyal members of the pack in line. strip him of dignity and things could unravel quickly. Su Lin had seen enough of the world to understand how that worked, so the young male lay back down, closed his eyes, and waited. Xiao Hui settled beside him immediately, mirroring his posture with the faithful precision of a wolf who had decided this rock was simply the right place. In the afternoon, Wolffather and the rest of the adults finally fell asleep. The cave went quiet. Su Lin opened his eyes, looked around once, stood up without a sound, and walked toward the entrance. He turned back. Xiao Hui was already on his feet, dark eyes sharp and ready. Su Lin checked the dark wolf's stats mentally. Close to level 3 now. Capable enough. He did not send him back. Let's go. He let out one quiet, directional howl. Xiao Hui fell and a step behind him without a sound, paws moving with a precision that was beginning to look less like a pup learning and more like a hunter following. The overcast sky made the white landscape flat and featureless. Low visibility, the kind of conditions Wolffather had correctly identified as poor for hunting large prey. Su Lin had a different calculation. He was 5 evolution points from leveling up. Just 5. He did not need a moose or a reindeer. He needed 5 points from something alive. That was a manageable problem. He moved deeper into the white. They found Arctic rabbits almost immediately, 7 or 8 of them scattered across frozen moss, nearly invisible against the snow. Su Lin looked at them and kept walking. The points were negligible now. He gestured to Xiao Hui with a flick of his head. These are yours. Practice on them. The dark wolf's eyes lit up, and he immediately lowered his body and charged straight at the warren without any preparation. The rabbits scattered in 6 directions before Xiao Hui had closed half the distance. He lunged at empty air, spun, lunged again, and came up with nothing. He stood in the snow, looking deeply confused. Su Lin walked over slowly. He looked at Xiao Hui with the patience of someone who had watched a predictable mistake play out exactly as predicted. Then he swatted the dark wolf firmly on the head once. Not hard, but clear. Punishment for failing and for charging like a panicked animal instead of a hunter. Xiao Hui yelped, shook his head, went very still. Ears back, eyes on Su Lin, completely waiting. Su Lin showed him the technique. He dropped flat against the snow, nearly invisible immediately, and began a slow, controlled crawl. Stop, move, stop, move. Let the world forget that you are there at all. Xiao Hui watched intently and began copying the motion in the underbrush beside him, practicing with the earnest focus of a student who had just been shown exactly how badly he needed this particular lesson. Su Lin left him practicing and ranged further out. The landscape was flat and quiet under the overcast sky. He moved carefully, reading the air with every breath, scanning every hollow and shadow in the snow. Then both of them froze at the exact same moment, not from a sound or a scent, but from something older than either. The instinct that registers wrongness before the conscious mind can even form the question. Su Lin pressed one large paw down on Xiao Hui's back, pushing the dark wolf flat into the underbrush without making a sound. He tucked his own white body into the frozen bushes and went completely still. A grizzly bear stepped out of the tree line 20 meters away. Male. At least 2 meters at the shoulder, heavily built even by the standards of a species that was already enormous in every possible sense. The system pulled up his stats instantly. Level 11. Chi blood 1859. Strength 113. Defense 119. Su Lin read the numbers with complete clarity. That bear could kill him without effort, and Xiao Hui, a pup that small, would not outrun a hungry grizzly in any terrain. There was no play here except total stillness. He pressed the dark wolf flat and held. The bear moved through the area with the unhurried confidence of something that feared nothing in its environment. It scraped frost-covered berries from several bushes and ate them with no urgency at all. Su Lin did not breathe loudly. He did not shift his weight. He kept his paw flat on Xiao Hui's back and watched the bear work through the berry bushes with absolute, unbroken, deliberate patience. Several minutes passed. Each one felt longer than the last. Xiao Hui lay completely motionless under Su Lin's paw. To his credit, the dark wolf had understood the situation and produced exactly no sound. The grizzly finished the last bush, turned and lumbered back into the tree line without once looking in their direction. The heavy sound of its paws in the snow faded slowly. Silence returned to the white. Su Lin lifted his paw and exhaled. The dark wolf rose, shook the snow from his charcoal fur, and looked up. Something new sat in his eyes now. Not just submission, but something closer to real understanding. Xiao Hui reached over and licked Su Lin's paw in gratitude. Su Lin swatted him on the head for it immediately. He did not like being licked by wolves. Xiao Hui accepted this and moved on. That was their dynamic. The encounter with the grizzly had sharpened something deep in Su Lin's chest. That bear had walked through their territory without knowing they existed. One day, that would no longer be possible. Not anywhere. He led Xiao Hui further south and kept searching. A herd of moose appeared in the middle distance. 2 large males visible among them, high level and dangerous. He looked at them briefly and kept walking. Several Arctic silver foxes appeared and vanished before he could get within range. Quick, careful animals that offered nothing and left no opening. He passed them without breaking his stride or his focus. Then the landscape finally offered something worth stopping for. A lone young female muskox, standing apart from any herd, grazing the frozen ground with the tense and anxious energy of a lost animal. She was immature, Slim for her species, roughly 1.5 meters long brown fur hanging over her sides. Her horns were still growing apart on her head. Her purple-blue eyes kept scanning the horizon. The system confirmed what his eyes already suggested. Level 6, Chi blood over 1,000. Defense 51, Strength 53, young and alone. Not weak, not small, but hers to lose today. This young female had strayed from her herd. With a poor sense of smell, she could not locate the scent trail her group had left. She kept pacing in tight, nervous circles, burning her own stamina steadily. She was vulnerable. That was not the same as helpless. A young female muskox was still 400 to 500 kilograms of animal with sharp horns, broad hooves, and the instinct to use both of them hard. Sulin signaled Xiaohui to stay down and hold position. This hunt was his alone. He could not afford an enthusiastic subordinate charging at the wrong moment and turning a precise fight into a disaster. He dropped flat and began his approach, slow, steady, reading every twitch of the young female's body as he moved. Her purple-blue eyes swept the terrain every few seconds. He advanced only when she looked away. 5 meters. The young female lifted her head sharply. Something had shifted in the air around her, a pressure she could not locate. Her hooves stamped the frozen ground. Her breathing quickened audibly. Sulin launched himself forward. A white streak through the gray light, covering the distance before the young female could turn, claws raking directly across her left eye. The strike landed perfectly. The young female muskox let out a deep bellowing cry of pain and pure fury. The eye wound was not instantly lethal, but it was devastating. Blood ran down her face. Vision on that side became a red blur. She did not retreat. Musk oxen do not retreat. It is simply not part of how they are built inside. She spun on her hooves and drove herself at Sulin with everything her large, powerful body could produce. Sulin moved. He shifted sideways at the last possible moment, the way a matador steps from a charge, precise and unhurried, using her own momentum against her. Her horns missed him by centimeters. As she thundered past, he raked his claws across her neck, 4 clean lines carved through the fur and into the muscle. Blood darkened her brown coat immediately. She swung around and came again, and again, each time Sulin stepped aside. Each time his claws found new angles on her neck and shoulders. He was not strong enough to hold her. He was fast enough to bleed her steadily until her body gave out on its own. She began adapting, even through the pain. By the 4th charge, she had started slowing down near him, trying to adjust her angle at the last moment rather than committing to the full force of the hit. Sulin did not dodge that time. He howled once and launched himself directly onto her back, fangs finding the thick fur at the base of her neck. She erupted beneath him with a rage that was almost admirable. She shook. She stamped. She threw herself sideways and nearly crushed him against the frozen ground. He was thrown off before his grip could hold and landed hard in the snow several meters away. One of her broad hooves came down before he could roll clear. The impact drove the breath from his body completely. He lay flat for a moment with the white Arctic sky spinning slowly above him. But he had torn off a chunk of her flesh in the moment before being thrown and swallowed it as the hoof landed. 5 evolution points. His total crossed the threshold the system had been holding over him all day. The surge came immediately. Every cell in his body reorganized at once. Bones densified. Muscle fibers thickened throughout. Level 5 completed. All core stats rose to 50. Base speed moved to 90. All 10 free attribute points went straight into speed. His speed reached 100. He lay one more breath in the snow, letting the evolution settle fully through him. The pain in his back dissolved completely. He stood up slowly. He looked across the blood-stained snow at the young female muskox. She was still standing, bleeding from 4 places, one eye destroyed, sides heaving, but she had not run from him. She could feel that something had changed in the white wolf across from her. Animals sense those shifts even when they cannot name them. She let out one final deep bellow and charged at him for the last time. Sulin ran at her. At speed 100, he was covering ground at 20 to 30 meters per second, more than twice the full sprint of any adult male wolf. The snow barely showed where his paws had landed. The young female could not track him. Her injured eye had taken half her vision and the other was blurred with tears of pain. She felt the impact before she ever saw him, fangs locking onto her throat from the side. He held. She fought. He held harder. His forepaws anchored into her neck and shoulder while her legs drove and her body shook with the desperate effort of an animal that had not yet decided it was finished. The blood loss from that point was inevitable. She was strong. She was genuinely brave. The stubborn, magnificent, uncompromising courage that musk oxen carry is simply a part of what they are. She went down in stages. Front legs first, then her hindquarters, then her full weight settled into the snow with a sound like a wall coming down slowly in a place where no one had built anything for a long time. Sulin released his grip and stepped back. He looked at her for a moment. Then he tilted his head back and let out a long howl that rose straight into the flat gray Arctic sky and spread across the empty white. Not far away, inside a gray-white off-road vehicle parked against a frozen ridge, a young woman named Tiffany pressed her binoculars to her face and simply forgot to breathe for several long seconds. Tiffany was 23 years old, from Norilsk, Russia, an explorer and wildlife researcher working on a study of Arctic tundra fauna in the weeks following a major blizzard event. She had been running a modest live stream on Facebook to pass the long filming hours. It had started with 20 or 30 scattered viewers. Over the past few days, that number had been climbing steadily. She was almost certain this was the same white wolf she had spotted weeks earlier, hunting Arctic rabbits alone with a quiet efficiency that had made her put down her tea mid-sip and reach for the binoculars. But hunting rabbits was one thing. What she had just witnessed was something different. One wolf, alone, taking down a muskox through patience and speed and a refusal to quit that was genuinely hard to explain. She finally lowered the binoculars and looked at her phone. Her viewer count had climbed past 3,000 while she was watching. Comments filled the screen faster than she could follow any single thread. Viewers argued hard about what they had seen. Impossible, said some. Starving and desperate, said others. A commenter with a biology background typed a calm, detailed case for why a lone wolf could do exactly this. Tiffany looked back at the white wolf standing still over the fallen muskox in the snow. She had filmed wildlife for years and seen remarkable things, but this particular animal was different. She felt it clearly. She raised the binoculars one more time. The white wolf was already working, methodical, unhurried, fully focused. The howl had faded. The Arctic was quiet again, and the hunt had been, by any measure, perfect. The muskox lay still in the snow. Sulin stood over her for one more breath, then turned and began the work of getting her back to the cave. This was the part no one ever expected from a lone wolf his size. She weighed 400 to 500 kilograms. He weighed a fraction of that. Dragging her across open Arctic terrain was not a problem of strength. It was a problem of engineering and the patience to apply it. He had solved this before. He found 2 smooth, frost-hardened branches nearby and worked them under the carcass. Her body rested on them, and the friction dropped immediately. Progress became possible. Xiaohui appeared from the underbrush the moment Sulin began moving. The dark wolf did not hesitate. He simply fell in beside the effort and began pushing from his side without being asked to do anything. It was not much help objectively. Xiaohui was still small and still developing, but the gesture registered. Sulin did not send him away. He let the dark wolf push and focused on his own end of the problem. They moved slowly through the flat white landscape, 2 wolves and a carcass, too large for either of them by normal logic. The cold had not changed. The distance had not changed. The overcast sky had not changed. But Sulin had changed, and that made all of it manageable in a way it would not have been a month ago. Level 5. Speed 100. A hunting talent sitting loaded in his system. He pulled. They moved. By the time they reached the cave, the pale gray light above the Arctic had begun fading toward evening. Sulin dragged the carcass through the entrance and let it drop in the center of the cave floor. Every wolf in the cave turned to look. Wolf father. Wolf mother. The newer wolves, whose loyalty was still tied mostly to food and proximity. All of them looked at the muskox. Then they looked at Sulin. A young wolf, by any external measure barely older than a large pup, had come back from the overcast tundra alone and dropped this in the center of their home. No one moved for a long moment after that. No one spoke, because wolves do not speak. But the quality of the silence that followed was something Sulin understood from a different life. He had felt that particular silence in different rooms before. It was the silence of a group being forced to update their understanding of something they thought they already had figured out. Quiet, thorough, slightly uncomfortable for everyone present simultaneously. Wolf Father was the first to move. He approached the carcass and sniffed it once, then looked directly at Sulin. The amber eyes held something complex. Not quite challenge, but not simple acceptance either. Sulin met that gaze without flinching and without posturing. He held it for exactly as long as it needed holding, and then looked away first. Not in submission. In acknowledgement. There was a real difference. Wolf Father held the look one more moment. Then he turned away from the carcass and went back to his place near the cave wall. The interaction was over. Something in the cave had shifted quietly but completely. Wolf Mother came forward next. She barely glanced at the carcass. She looked at Sulin, licked him once on the side of his face, quickly, almost matter-of-factly, and then stepped back and sat down. Sulin accepted this without moving. It was different from Wolf Mother's earlier bewilderment. Something more settled sat in it now, something that said she had stopped being surprised by what he brought back. Xiaohui, standing slightly behind Sulin as always, watched the whole exchange with bright and careful eyes. He was absorbing something from this interaction, even if he could not have named exactly what it was. The pack ate well that night. The muskox provided far more meat than anything the adult wolves had dragged back from several recent hunts combined. Every animal in the cave went to sleep full for once. Sulin ate last and alone, as he always did now. Not because the others pushed him aside, quite the opposite. He chose it. Eating after the others meant seeing the full distribution before taking his own share. He pulled what he needed from the carcass with precise and unhurried bites, listening to the system chime steadily in the background. Each evolution point logged. Each step toward the next threshold counted. Level 5 required 320 evolution points to advance. He had 0 after the muskox hunt. The moose and the muskox had both reset his counter when he crossed the last threshold completely. That was fine. The muskox carcass alone would provide substantial points over the coming days. And the pack's moose still had plenty of meat left. He had time. He would build the total the way he built everything. After eating, Sulin walked to the cave entrance and stood looking out at the Arctic night. The sky had cleared while they ate. Stars pressed down through the cold air, sharp and impossibly numerous above the white. In his previous life, he had never paid much attention to stars. There had always been something else demanding his focus, a dig site, a supply route, a deadline that could not be moved for any reason at all. Here, there was nothing demanding his attention right now, just the cold, the dark, and the white land stretching to every horizon, with the stars above pressing down with a weight that felt almost physical. He stood there for a while without strategizing, just existing in the place he had been put into, in the body he had been given, on the continent he had landed on without asking for any part of it at all. Then Xiaohui padded up and sat down beside him. The dark wolf made no sound. He simply sat next to Sulin and looked out at the same darkness with the same quiet attention. Two wolves at one cave entrance. Sulin looked down at the dark wolf beside him. Xiaohui looked back. What passed between them in that moment did not require language or system prompts or attribute panels to be something genuinely real. He turned back toward the inside of the cave. Tomorrow there would be hunting. Tomorrow there would be points to accumulate and decisions to make about territory and the pack's next move across the tundra. But tonight the cave was warm, the pack was full, and his level 5 body was still settling into itself, every muscle and bone quietly adjusting to what it had just become overnight. Tonight was enough. Far from the cave, parked against the frozen ridge where she had watched the muskox hunt, Tiffany sat in her off-road vehicle in the dark and stared at her phone with a complicated expression on her face. Her live stream had ended 2 hours ago, but she had been sitting here since, reviewing footage, watching the hunt play back on her screen again from a distance that somehow felt closer every time she rewatched it. 3,000 viewers had watched it live. When she packaged the footage and posted it to her research page, the number climbed to 4 times that within the first hour. It kept moving steadily upward. She had filmed Arctic wolves before, polar bears, caribou, musk ox herds, silver foxes in the winter light. 2 years of fieldwork had given her a strong baseline for what normal looked like out on the tundra. What she had watched today did not fit that baseline at all. A lone wolf, young by developmental markers, had taken down a musk ox, alone and methodically in a way not documented anywhere in the field literature. Wolves used pack coordination. They used relay exhaustion strategies across long distances. A lone wolf circling, bleeding, waiting, using the prey's own momentum as a weapon, appeared in no record she knew. The tactics had been precise and wrong in the most interesting possible way. Wrong not because they failed, but because they should not have existed inside a wolf's brain under any behavioral model currently known. She had filled 3 pages of her field journal with questions she did not yet have answers to. Observations that kept pulling her back to the same white figure, standing still in the snow after the kill was done. His fur was unusual. Pure white was not rare in Arctic wolves, but the density of this coat, the way it held even flat, overcast light, was not something she had noted in this region or anywhere else before. His movement patterns were unusual. The slow approach, the lateral dodges, the precision of each strike